The war film genre of New Vision has specific criteria for the representation of authority, combat, and purpose. In this type of film, the authority is relatable, the combat is gory and unclear, and the higher purpose is questioned. I watched The Hurt Locker, directed by Catherine Bigelow in 2008, and it is about an Iraq war explosive ordnance disposal team. I chose events from the time frame of 1998 to 2008. In terms of authority, I can clearly see how the authority is treated as a regular, low-ranking, relatable soldier. In the film, the soldiers do not listen to their friend like leader. Specifically, there is a scene where the sergeant says to his inferior, James, which is him, "James, we need to get out of here." And he replied, "Roger that," and then he didn't move and he removed his headset. The authority figure is being questioned because he is seen by his men as so inferior that they don't listen to him. The authority figure gets questioned by the viewer because if he can't control his men, how is he going to properly direct a group of soldiers? A real-life event that parallels the situation is the questioning of the government when Hurricane Katrina hit August 23, 2005. The government's lack of urgency led to many deaths. The White House never appointed a coordinator to monitor the disaster developments. Officials sounded no alarm until the city had been flooding for at least 24 hours. The government is prepared for catastrophe, but was too relaxed to act fast. This led to a lot of questioning of authority and raised questions about how the government would be able to run a country in a smooth manner if they can't handle one disaster properly and with power. And this is the sergeant in the middle. He looks like just one of the regular soldiers. In terms of combat, I can clearly see the gory and unclear actions occurring in the film. There were many moments when I was cringing watching the bloody, unbelievable scenes. Along with the gore, the unclearness of the combat was something that I took many notes on. The camera angles, specifically, were oftentimes from the view of a soldier's eye through the gun, or right next to the soldier, like here, or from the view of the enemy. It is rare, like in this film, to get a distinct view of the combat where you can see all of the gunshots and where everything's coming from. In this film, the enemy killed a young boy the main character had a big brother relationship with, and they didn't just stop when they killed the young boy, they cut him open and placed bombs inside of his body, and the main character then had to disarm the bomb and cut the wires that were inside of his bloody body. So we don't see this type of gore on television when we watch the news about wars and bombings. The combat is also very unclear in this film. There are many confusing moments without dialogue to help. For example, a mysterious man ran down the stairs and dropped a cell phone on the steps near the soldiers, and then the movie continued and never mentioned this man, or who he was, or what he dropped, or why he was there, which just is really confusing. Also, the viewer and the soldiers can't see where the gunshots and snipes are coming from when they're getting attacked, and they shoot into what seems like thin air at trying to aim for the enemy, but they don't hit anyone. This reminds me of the real-life event of the bombing of Iraq in December in 1998, which is this. This was a gory, brutal, 4-day bombing on Iraqi targets. The U.S. bombed because of Iraq's failure to follow our requests. This bombing came as a surprise to the Iraqi targets, so it was unclear and vulnerable. It was a very unclear and vulnerable moment for Iraq and the U.S., just like depicted in this film. And in terms of purpose, I can clearly see the higher purpose and priorities are questioned. In the film, the intentions of the soldiers are unclear to the viewer and even more so to the civilians of Iraq. For example, when the soldiers drive through the neighborhoods, the civilians glare at them like, "Why are you in our country?" The purpose is unclear. I don't understand why U.S. soldiers are hunting down bombs that haven't exploded that aren't even in our own country. So much trust from Americans and the government is being put in the hands of these soldiers to do good and stop the bad guys from harming this country. This reminds me of the trust that was put into the government's hands after the terrorist attacks on September 11th, 2001. George W. Bush had, unlike in this film, a very clear priority, and he said that disarming Iraq was a priority because there was much vulnerability following 9/11 with Iraq's claims of manufacturing weapons of mass destruction. Americans felt close after 9/11 because they could only do one thing, trust the government and the national decisions that were being made.